All right, ready to start, huh? Well, good evening. It's night, 10 o'clock. But nonetheless, hello to you all. I hope that you had a restful spring break. Um, I know that we have this shelter-at-home order, and it feels like a long break, all the time. Today, though, I was able to go for a walk with my family, and that was rad. Hope you guys have had a good day, a good Sunday. So, listen, we are actually I forgot to here. I forgot to give it the name, but so we are shifting gears to entertainment as political, and you're like, whoa, what's that mean? Well, um, when we say politics, we think about it like ideology, so different ideas and values and norms that surround a society. And we see it a lot in things like, how funds should be utilized, and there's all sorts of ideas. So think of it like that. And this is going to be a really exciting time because we are going to be doing an important step of writing composition, of English composition, and it's such an interesting thing. So hold on to your hats, folks. We're starting a new unit, and that's entertainment as political, because we're moving away from tech and us, and so let's go. So if we're going to click here, textual analysis lecture, this is what you're going to need. So the handout. So go ahead and click it and have it ready, because this is going to be part of the module for this week. So as I'm going through this lecture, or if you choose to revisit the video or the PowerPoint itself, and just make sure that you're filling this out, okay? It's a Word document, so you're able to type into it, okay? So do have this open, and this is the accompanying handout with the lecture, all right? So, either if you're going to print it out and write it out in pen, then that's cool. You can just scan it, or if you're going to type it out, then absolutely just submit the document. No sweat, no sweat. Okay, so let's have that ready. This is the PowerPoint itself, so go ahead and open that, and let's go. All right, slideshow, play from start. All right, textual analysis. Let's get into it. So, first of all, when you hear the word text, what is something that comes to mind? So take a moment, pause the video, and like I said, this is the accompanying handout. Jot down some words that come to mind when you hear the word text. So everything like, I don't know, the the last message that my friend sent me on the phone, like a text message, or a stack of dusty books, or cobwebs, or I don't know, just whatever comes to your mind. Go ahead and jot it down here where it says text. You actually delete it, and I'm going to say what, a text message? I don't know. Maybe dusty books, whatever else comes to mind. And then just keep listing some things that come to mind, phrases, words. So hopefully you had a chance to do that. And, okay, so let's press space. There it is. So it's very likely, and this happens all the time, that all of your responses pertain to text as being some sort of only written work, right? I often get plays or books or articles, but what all those responses have in common is that they're written works. And listen, a text is actually far more dynamic and exciting than that. So when I was in grad school, I read this book by a writer called Joseph Harris, and the book was Rewriting How to Do Things with Text. And he reconceptualized text in such a way that creates it as something far more dynamic and exciting. So he describes it as a constructed artifact that carries meaning. All right, so that's something that you're going to have to know for your handout. A constructed artifact that carries meaning, and that's something that we're going to have to revisit. But yeah, just like you said, sure, a book, an article, those are all forms of text. Like written works are forms of text. But if we revisit the definition, which is a constructed artifact that carries meaning, then first of all, for it to be an artifact, it has to be something that is concrete. As you can see here, something that can in some way be shelved, filed, and then revisited. Okay, so something concrete, a created artifact that carries meaning. So implicit within that definition is that there is some underlying, some deeper indirect suggestion or something like that, which, hey, I'm already giving you clues for what's to come. So with that being said, a movie is a text, a song can be a text, a painting, a sculpture, a photograph, a cartoon, a video, a billboard, advertisement, web pages. So, but you're like, okay, yo, Mr. Goodaway, are you saying that this moment that I'm living here is a text? Well, you can't just go like willy-nilly left and right calling everything a text, because remember, first of all, it has to be concrete. It has to. You need to be able to shelve it and revisit it, but it's a constructed artifact that carries meaning. So, like for example, let's say if you're like, okay, what if you step outside of your house and all of a sudden, whoa, like a herd of elephants passes by? Far-fetched, huh? So a moment is not necessarily something concrete or tangible, unless, say, maybe you photograph it. Okay, now the photograph of that moment is the text, or maybe you write a haiku about the moment, or just some other form of poem, or just somehow document it, sketch the moment. Okay, now it becomes a text, constructed artifact that carries meaning. You can deconstruct it. Does anybody recognize this? It's from Pink Floyd, The Wall, and it's such a rad allegory because it has symbolism of like everything from Nazi Germany to the Berlin Wall, and so it has historical allusions, and not only that, but a larger overarching motif of isolation. So, so texts are way larger than only written works, because they're a constructed artifact that carries meaning, and you're like, okay. All right, I get it, Mr. Goodaway. I see what you're saying. A text can be many things. Sure. Now, since this is textual analysis, well, how do we actually go about, looking at a text? Well, we analyze it, and to do a textual analysis, we deconstruct a composite into its components. So just like we have this really cool Mario made of Legos. This is a composite. So a composite is just something holistic, something larger that is made up of smaller parts. Okay? So with that being said, the larger Mario here is a composite, and each individual block is a component, right? Many things around us are made up of components. Even us, right? We're made up of cells and molecules and all these organs, and so those are all components making up our bodies and such. So when we do this, like, okay, I get it. So we're taking something larger and we're deconstructing into smaller parts, and we're looking at individual parts, and we're seeing how those individual parts, or in this case the Lego blocks, fit together to form something larger, right? Okay, that's a pretty cool thought. But how do we do this with actual text? Well, this might ring a bell, or it might not. we move from denotation to connotation, and simply put, denotation is just the surface level meaning of something. It's just that's why we have this iceberg here. So the tip of the iceberg. We have not considered any indirect suggestions. We have not considered anything beyond what we're seeing. It's just surface level meaning. Like if I were to say, for example, a snake, we understand the meaning. It's a limbless scale reptile with a long tapering body. Okay, we know what a snake is. But with that would change with connotation. So connotation takes it a step further. It goes from just what is at the surface level and looks at the deeper level meaning. So in essence, it would be the bottom of the iceberg. So what's beneath the surface, quite literally. So for example, if I call you snake, then culturally, what do we understand a snake to be? For connotation, what we consider are, here, this is really important. I would actually write this down. So connotation considers indirect suggestions. Something that I'm seeing is kind of missing from this note, but do write that. Indirect suggestions, social cultural overtones, emotional meanings, and implications. So an implication is the so what, right? And so yeah, again, so indirect suggestions, social cultural overtones, emotional meanings, and implications, which are so what. And so interestingly, like if we revisit the example of being called a snake, what's the connotation of being called a snake? What is the cultural overtone, at least here in the West? Well, if you're called a snake, then what's implied is that you're somebody who cannot be trusted, someone who will cheat, someone who will take advantage of the situation without a second's thought. So hopefully you don't have any snakes in your circle of friends, and if you do, cut it, cut it. Remember that song? Cut it, cut it. But anyways, you need to cut out all the snakes. So we understand that the connotation of being called a snake. Interestingly, too, like if we look at a dragon here in the West, the connotation or the cultural overtone of a dragon is something malevolent, something vile. Even Satan is often seen as like the dragon, right? So we always see that in cartoons and superheroes and tales of knighthood, so on and so forth. But in the East, the connotation is distinct. The cultural overtone is one of something that is fortuitous, something that brings with it good fortune and good things. So it has a far more positive connotation as opposed to the negative connotation that the dragon has here in the West. Okay, so we're going to look at a really cool example. It's a historical example. Let me actually minimize this to make things easier, so I'll stop running into it. Okay, so we are looking here, poster number 1. Sweet. Okay, so let's get a little bit of context. We're going to time travel to World War II. So even though officially World War II started in 1939, went to 45, the United States involvement was not until 41, and actually there was an alliance that our country took part in called the Grand Alliance, and they were set to contend against the Axis powers, which, if you'll recall, that's Japan, Italy, Germany, right? And so here came this Grand Alliance, which was the United States, United Kingdom, and whoa, surprise, surprise, the Soviet Union. And here are the leaders representing these superpowers here, representing this Grand Alliance. Okay, so here we have Joseph Stalin for the Soviet Union, Franklin D. Roosevelt for the U.S., and Winston Churchill for the UK. So here we have a Grand Alliance. And what you need to consider is that obviously, whenever we have an alliance with a given nation state, then certainly the sentiment towards that nation state will be a favorable one, right? We will see them under a positive light. So bear that in mind. And what we're actually going to look at is a poster that here in the United States we would have seen during this time, during this Grand Alliance, when the Soviet Union was indeed our ally in this instance during World War II. But before I move to that propaganda poster, I'd like to just point out a little bit of how propaganda works. So this is a propaganda poster, and I'm going to have this note here. So propaganda, propaganda creates a binary, and it utilizes rhetoric. So it utilizes rhetoric to either glorify or vilify a figure/idea. So that's a very interesting thing. In works of fiction or in all sorts of representations and depictions, figures or people or characters represent more than just what we see at the surface, more than just what they denote, right? What they denote is like, okay, here's this individual, but they represent an idea, they represent values, they represent norms. So with what propaganda, we often see it in things like posters or film reels or even films or music, actually art, essentially art, and just as art can be utilized for constructive purposes, then so too can it be used to malign, and or for all sorts of purposes. And actually, I don't know if you knew this, but there were classical compositions in music to bring about the sense of patriotism during the for the Soviet Union, and so music could even be used to bring about patriotism, like whoa, art. So that's what propaganda does. So so we can say propaganda. So a form of art. A form of art created with the purpose of and I guess I could say either glorifying or vilifying a figure / idea. So we could say this. So propaganda utilizes rhetoric to achieve this purpose. Let's just go ahead and erase this just to make things easier. So here, there's a lot of new terms. I don't know if you caught this, but actually the way at the back here of the worksheet, there's a new words. So any new words that we come across here, this happy dog, like yay, new words. So anything that you hear, like new terms and such, you can write them down there. Okay, so let's return to this. So propaganda, it's art, and it has the purpose of either glorifying or vilifying a figure or idea. First of all, let's look at this word, glorify. Well, what does it mean to glorify? Does it have a positive connotation, a negative connotation? Yes. So to bring glory to it, we're hoisting it on high. We're celebrating it, right? But with vilifying it, if we look at this, the root word is vile, right? So to paint something under a negative light, most definitely. And the way that we malign or paint something under a negative light is that we other completely. We dehumanize, and that is actually a form of rhetoric. You're like, whoa, rhetoric! You're throwing, Mr. Goodall, you're throwing all these terms my way. Just let me get ready to bat them because you're throwing them my way. So, so rhetoric is just the art of persuasion in speech or text. Hey, now you know that a text can be many things. So now we understand that. So we want to persuade, and the way that we do that, oftentimes with rhetoric, is that we create, well, at least propaganda creates a binary, and the fact that it's employing this device is, in turn, a form of rhetoric, a form of persuasion. Okay, so if you could look at it that way, it's a form of persuasion, and okay, so I think we've seen that. Okay, so yeah, the binary. So first of all, a binary is just a series of opposites, right? So with that being said, there's always something that is painted under a favorable light and always something under a negative light. And actually, we don't have to go too far. We're talking about World War II, right? So during World War II, the Nazis would actually use propaganda to vilify the Jews, people of Jewish descent, and they would do so exactly by what we're talking about, like by vilifying. How would they vilify? Well, they would dehumanize. In fact, they would have film reels that would show scores of rats just passing by and equate the Jews and what they're doing to being a pestilence and bringing about all these negative things. So they call it like like as invasive species and pests. So certainly when we dehumanize, we are able to vilify. We're able to paint as the villain, as vile, as opposed to when we are glorifying, we're if we could say, okay, this figure or idea is like us. It's one of us. It's something that we accept. It's something that we hoist on high, that we celebrate. Okay, so. And then, interestingly enough, did you guys know, this might blow your mind, but actually Dr. Seuss had propaganda during the World War, II. So look at this. Here's one. This is Dr. Seuss. So, time to swap the old book for a set of brass knuckles. So, what's this guy reading? So, it's Uncle Sam. This is representing here the United States, right? So, again, remember, figures represent ideas, values. In this case, the United States. Rules for a gentleman's conduct in combat. Okay, but then look who's watching from the side. We have Hitler representing Germany, and we have Emperor Hirohito representing Japan, right? All members of the Axis powers, right? So they were our enemies in that World War, and so yeah, this is interesting. So again, we see the binary at work of either glorifying an idea and at the same time vilifying another one, and that's how propaganda functions. It works with binaries and representations and depictions, and we're actually going to look at an example, and now that we have this context more clear in our minds. So remember I just said that during this time of the Grand Alliance, the Soviet Union, they were our allies. So first of all, you need to ask yourself, does this propaganda poster vilify or does it glorify the figure of the Soviet soldier, of the Russian soldier? Take a look at the poster. So it says this. This man is your friend. He fights for freedom. So absolutely, pause the video when you're ready, because what you're going to do is here on your poster, you're going to look, first of all, at denotative details. So those are surface level details where you have not considered anything beyond what you see at the surface level. So you have not considered indirect suggestions or social cultural overtones or implications, which is where you consider the so what question. So again, like some examples might be as simple as this. Friend is in all caps. Freedom is in all caps. This banner is in blue. We see stars. And then I don't want to give it all away, but what do you see in the semblance, in the face of the soldier and his regalia, anything else? So once you do that, like for example, I'll give you one just so that you can see. So what about this? What about this? So if friend is in all caps, then that's a sign that it's glorifying this figure, since the Russians were our allies during this moment, this historical moment. So if friend is in all caps, okay, he's one of us and he's glorified. That would go on the implication side. So on this side, so I could be like this. So I'll give you like friend is in all caps, and then I might say something like this represents the fact that the Russians were one of us and thus able to be trusted. So I want you to see what you do. Do that for each detail that you see. So on denotation, no consideration of suggestion, no consideration of implication, of social cultural overtones, nothing, not yet. It's just a surface level detail that you see. That's a denotative detail. And then directly across from that, you're gonna consider, okay, what is the indirect suggestion of friend in all caps, and anything else that you might find. I don't want to actually give it all away. Oh my gosh, was I looking at the wrong one? So guys, please be mindful of where you do this. So that this is what we're looking at, poster 1. See, my bad. Do be careful. So this is for the next thing that we're gonna do. My bad. Okay, so all right. So like I said, you can pause the video. And once you have, there's no set number of how many things you need, but like, just get a few details that you do see. Because I actually forgot to mention, when we do a here's another term. When we do a textual analysis on an image or a video or something like an advertisement, we're moving within a field called semiotics. So that could be another word here. And yeah, I think that would be another term you can write down at the back of your sheet with a smiling dog. So oh my gosh, did I misspell it? Semiotics. So semiotics is the study of signs and symbols. So when we look at a symbol, it represents something beyond just what we see at the surface level. Like everybody knows the Dodgers symbol, right? And same thing with the angel symbol, which interestingly enough, even though it's in Anaheim, but they call themselves Los Angeles Angels, but they're not in Los Angeles, so that's something that always perplexed me a bit. But anyways, the point is, now that we're studying these posters, we're looking at signs, we're looking at symbols, so we're being semioticians here. We're conducting textual analysis on a propaganda poster, and same thing, if we did it on an image or a poster from Banksy or Shepard Fairey, then we would be doing semiotic work, right? So that's what semioticians do. They do textual analysis, and so my fellow semioticians, go forth and conquer with this particular propaganda poster. So check this out. Let's stay on this example. We said that the Russians were our allies from 41 to 45, and then literally only 2 years later from that point, we enter the Cold War with them. And first of all, it was called a Cold War because rather than directly, firing at each other or being in direct conflict in the sense that we're bombing each other directly or shooting at each other directly, because that's a hot war. It's a hot war when you are in direct contention with the foe. But a Cold War is what we saw here, and that manifested itself in various forms. One that comes to mind is who could send a man to outer space first? The Soviet Union or the United States? And here's a funny part, even in the language. So the United States called the men that they would send to space astronauts. So meaning the astros, so pertaining to the galaxies. Actually, hold on. No, I think astros pertains to the stars. And then cosmonauts pertains to the galaxies. But let me see. Astro meaning, relating to the stars or celestial objects or outer space. And then cosmo, I think cosmo is like oh my gosh, universe. Well, there you have it. So if cosmo is the universe, okay, cosmos is the universe, and then astro is the stars. Okay, that's what it was. You'd be like, Mr. Godoy, why are you thinking about this? Okay, because the United States called the men that they would send to outer space astronauts. So if with that prefix astro, it's talking about the stars, the celestial bodies. Okay, the stars. to one up us, the Soviets called their man cosmonauts. So if cosmo is like pertaining to the universe, right? That's what we saw there. That's a much larger scale than only the stars. So even in the language they tried to one up. It's like who can make it to space first? And then the Soviet Union was the first. I think it was like Yuri. Let me see. Did the Soviets send a man to space first? I think it was Yuri Gagarin, yeah. So he was the first one, first human to journey into outer space. So they won that one. And not only was it that, they call it the space race. Not only was it the space race, but there was also what's called an arms race, and they call it an arms race because they were developing missiles. They were developing all sorts of war material and armament to, figuratively, if you will, flex their biceps. Like who was the stronger superpower? Who could have the strongest, weapons and missiles, and oh my gosh, if that's not hubris, I don't know what it is. And thus we see the same ethos in our blockbuster movies of the same protagonist who's always braggadocious and. But anyways, that's why actually we see this picture here of Mikhail Gorbachev, which is the leader of the Soviets, and JFK then, and I don't know if you see it, but they're actually arm wrestling and they're sitting on top of missiles. So even though they weren't directly firing missiles at one another, but they were developing armaments and so they're arm wrestling. And another thing too that they did during the Cold War is that they did what's called proxy wars, and this really touches close to home because, so me, I was born in El Salvador in 1987, and that was a time of there was a civil war in El Salvador back then, and So the guerrilleros, or guerrilla soldiers, which were of a communist bent, wanted to bring that in to the government, and then the National Army, which was had a more democratic ideology. So here's why this matters. So the United States would actually fund smaller factions from other nations that aligned with their own ideologies, and or sponsor. And then the Soviet Union would do the same for factions of other nations that would align with their own ideology. So in my case, I'm talking about El Salvador. So the Soviets sponsored the guerrilleros, or the guerrilla soldiers. And when I say sponsor, I mean like providing training, providing armaments, and same thing with the United States. So they did it for the factions that align with their ideologies. And it's really a sad thing because so many people died, and it's kind of like a scenario where there's a puppeteer and a marionette, and by funneling both funds and war materiel and training into the faction that aligned with you politically, United States and then the Soviet Union, it's kind of like dance, marionettes, and fighting, and so that's how it was called. Because even though the U.S. and the Soviets didn't directly fight one another, but through proxy wars, they did so kind of more remotely, if you will. So yeah, and why this matters, if we return to this, okay, all of a sudden now, the Soviets are no longer our allies. Instead, they are our foes. So sentiment does a complete 180, and this is the propaganda poster that we would see here in the States during this time of the Cold War. And I want you to take a look at it. So it says this: if Russia and the communists should win the next world war, oh my gosh, they're already predicting another world war. And if World War II had just ended in 45, so 2 years later, which is 47 now, it's like they're predicting a World War III. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me read that again. If Russia and the communists should win the next world war, many American men would be sterilized. Whoa. In the case the communists should conquer, our women would be helpless beneath the boots of the Asiatic Russians. So first of all, is this a poster that is glorifying or vilifying the figure of the Soviets? And what we're essentially doing is working backwards. Okay, absolutely, it's vilifying, right? It's not a positive light. So we're deconstructing just how it's vilifying. We're looking at this propaganda poster. Remember, propaganda works with binaries of either glorifying or vilifying. We've said that it vilifies. So with that in mind, go to this next poster. Don't tell me that. This is odd. Oh, that's why, because there's actually another page here. Okay, so same thing. So denotation, surface level things that you notice. Like I'll give you one example. Okay, here. Just I don't want to give away too much, but how about this? Even this small thing. Okay, Russia is in a font completely different from everything else, right? So what did I say? How do you vilify? Well, you dehumanize, you other, and if the font is completely different from anything, the font that says Russia is completely different from anything else, then they're other, they're vilified. So then I could say something like that. I could say the word Russia is written in a font completely different from the rest of the poster. Okay, so then you then directly across. So for every denotative detail that you consider, do recognize what is the implication, what is the connotation. So what is this implying? What is the indirect suggestion? What is the social cultural overtone? So on and so forth. And that's how you dig. So then I could say this connotes a move of othering the Russian. Oh, what's happening with my spelling? Okay, so does that make sense? So pause the video and look at this poster more closely. And so everything from the writing to what you actually see in the image itself, and then how is it that is moving to vilify the figure of the Russians? All right. So when you're ready, yeah, just like I said, pause the video, and we are going to resume the video. So, our last exploration of textual analysis will be through the avenue of satire, which, if we look at this definition here, so satire is a work that ridicules its subject through use of techniques such as exaggeration, reversal, incongruity, and or parody in order to make a comment or criticism about it. So that definition is immensely important. So we're going to add it to our whiteboard here. Okay, and this is something that I would also include on the back of your sheet with the smiling dog. So we could say this. So satire, I don't know, like if we put it on our own words, satire moves to criticize or make a point about something through, and then here's the different techniques that it utilizes. So we said exaggeration, we said reversal, and incongruity, which actually the example we're going to look at is going to have a lot of incongruity. Did I miss anything? Exaggeration, reversal, incongruity, and parody. Okay. So exaggeration, we know it's blowing something to completely accentuated and amplified proportions. You know what it is to exaggerate. If not, if I say, "Oh man, I haven't seen you in a million years," that's an exaggeration. Reversal. When we see, I got it. Okay. Something that you would not expect from, say, a particular figure, like a reversal in role. So, for example, if I saw maybe I was watching a satirical sketch that depicted some like tyrannical despot as behaving very, very kindly and patiently, and so the complete opposite of what they would actually be like as a person. So that's reversal. So a reversal in roles. Actually, that fits with this incongruity. So if we return to geometry, what are congruent triangles? They have these equal sides, congruent triangles. So triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, meaning that in terms of the angles, right, they're the same. So if they're equal, they're the same. You could say like that they fit together. When we talk about it in terms of like as a vocab word, so in this instance, my tone, to be congruent, my tone would match the content, right? If I said, "Hey, guess what? I got a raise today." So my tone is happy, joyful, and it's happy because the content of what I'm saying is overall positive. But it would be incongruent if I said, "Oh, you won't believe it. So this morning I got a flat tire, and then as I was changing my tire, someone pulled over and stole my car from me. And then after that happened, as I was late to work, I was let go. This is the greatest day ever." So see how that's incongruent, because my tone is celebratory, but the content is not necessarily positive, nor does it warrant celebration. So that's why it's incongruent. Okay. And then parody, a spoof of something when we're imitating, right? Saturday Night Live does it, and if you ever saw In Living Color and all those other satirical shows, which actually Jim Carrey got his start on In Living Color, by the way. Okay, so satire. So what's rad about satire is that it brings to the fore a lot of times there are like many elephants in the room of things that in society like no one's really talking about it. They're like issues. And to improve things, you have to begin a dialogue about it. So satire has this cool thing of bringing things to the fore, bringing things to the public's attentions. Like like I said, like there can't be any societal development unless there's even a dialogue to begin with of something. And I have a great example. So not too long ago, South Park had an episode on Amazon, right? And it was really bringing to light the types of conditions that Amazon workers were experiencing. So in the episode, they demonstrate how the workers like kind of line up like how the whole process is, and then once they're in, like there were a lot of like unsafe situations and just nothing but artificial light, no natural light coming in, and that's the episode where through all the Alexa cameras, Jeff Bezos, the Amazon CEO, would watch everyone. But the point is that like it was able to spark a commentary of conditions. And like I had a student in one of my classes that said, "Hey, Mr. Godoy, that's exactly what it's like." They got it spot on. So what we're going to look at, have you guys ever heard of the publication called The Onion? So if for those of you who haven't, The Onion is it's a publication that publishes articles, satirical articles. And I have a question. Did I not provide for you the actual article? Oh my goodness, it looks like I didn't. Have no fear. I will absolutely provide that for you by the end of this. But what I'm going to do now, because I know for a fact that I have provided in my Chafee one, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to log into my Chafee one. So go. Okay, that's how mine look. That's how the GIFs look for those classes. The cat makes me laugh. Okay, what was I going to look? Oh yeah, classwork. Here it is. Online University allows students to amass. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and just download that just to make that easier. Okay, so like I said, have no fear. I will upload this by the time this is over. So when you see it, it'll be there. So check this out. We are going to look at this article, and here, go to the handout. And first of all, try to determine, okay, well, what's the tone or general attitude of how this is presented, and then what's the actual topic that the article is commenting on or critiquing. And I'll give you a hint. It's not only colleges. Be a little bit more specific. And that's all I'll say there. What is its position? So its position is its stance. Like truthfully, how does the writer feel about what it is talking about? And here's the thing. With satire, a lot of times what you see, you can't take it for face value. Like if there's incongruity, it's for a reason. Like if the author is talking about something negative in a celebratory tone, then it's not really like meaning like, hey, I'm so happy all these lousy things are happening. No, they're doing that to bring attention to the viewers and readers. Like, yo, this is a big deal. We got to do something about it. So be mindful of that. And as you're reading this, pay attention for where you might see instances of exaggeration, where you might see instances of reversal, of incongruity. There's a lot of incongruity. And actually, I'm going to read this to you, and just check it out. Online university allows students to amass crippling debt at own pace. Look at the picture. Accrue paralyzing debt on your own schedule. So before we start, here's another vocab word, tout, touting. Okay, so tout. To tout is to really bring to the fore the positive attributes of something so as to promote it. So if I was a car salesman, then I would tout all of the features of the car that we're looking at. Like I would say, hey, it has a built-in navigation control. It has these cruise control built in. It has a V8 engine. It's a really big engine. I don't know if you would want that, but the point is, I would be touting features of the car. I would be promoting it. So it carries with it a positive connotation because it's promoting positive attributes, so as to ultimately promote the item. Okay, so that's what it means to tout. And if you want, you can actually take a moment to jot that down at the back of your worksheet. So tout, we can say maybe accentuates the positive attributes of something so as to promote it, something like that. And instantly we already see incongruity at work. Because tout has a more positive connotation and it's more celebratory, right? So let's listen. Touting its wide range of financially ruinous academic programs that can be tailored to meet anyone's scheduling needs. Officials at Enterprise College announced Monday that the online institution is committed to letting students amass a crippling amount of debt at their own individual pace. Even if you work full-time and are busy raising a family, Enterprise College's flexible courses make it easy to get back to school and take out enough student loans to completely devastate your personal finances for years to come, said spokesperson Carrie Williams, describing how the for-profit college accommodates those who prefer to rack up their overwhelming debt a few $1,000s at a time, as well as those who would rather just plunge $30,000 into the red in 2 short years. At Enterprise College, you can take as long as you need to acquire your impossible-to-shoulder burden, and with more than 180 degrees offered completely online, it's easier than ever to slip into complete destitution from the comfort of your own home. Williams went on to state that regardless of the rate at which students accumulate debt, the sooner they enroll, the sooner they can begin defaulting on their loans and having their wages garnished by the government. What do you think? It's just peppered with so much incongruity. Because you see the celebratory tone and the incongruent actual content. So what you're going to do is, just like we've been doing with our propaganda posters, you're going to be looking at particular denotative details, and that could be anything from a word or a phrase, and then you're going to be considering, first of all, if it's incongruous, then you consider what? So what? Why is it incongruous? For example, here's the big one. You could say, there is a smiling lady who seems to be happy to accrue paralyzing debt on her own. And then consider, okay, so what? How is this incongruous? You can say something like, this is incongruous because why would anybody be happy to accrue paralyzing debt? And then after that, you can consider the indirect suggestion. So the author of this piece is critiquing blah blah blah. Okay, so do that for each detail, and that could be a phrase, maybe this, touting its wide range of financially ruinous academic programs. So first of all, look when you're looking at things that really get your attention. So I thought this last sentence was funny, and you're considering just how there are examples of incongruity, or if you see anywhere that is maybe exaggeration, or anything like that, because I actually want to give you some context. You're like, where is this all coming from? I don't understand. Well, the thing about satire is that it looks at contemporary things that are happening either in society, in economy, anywhere else. Okay, so with that being said, there is a context behind this, and to give you a little bit more context, okay, I have the link here. Let's go to it. And I want you to also see the date. (2015). Okay, yeah. So a few years ago, there were actually lawsuits against for-profit schools because, if you watch this little video clip, you'll see. When we say okay, first of all, we need to make a distinction. So, a public school here, like a public university here in California, could be maybe everything from the Cal States, the UCs. A private school could be something like, okay, so there's public and private. A private school could be something like, the Claremont colleges, McKenna College, all those that are included there. USC is actually a private school. A for-profit school is everything like Art Institute, University of Phoenix, the now defunct ITT Tech, and DeVry, which actually was part of the lawsuit, is that these for-profit schools were promising all these things like, when after graduating from their programs, that when they'd enter the workforce, the degree would be held in very high regard, so it would carry a lot of weight. And not only that too, but students were taking out loans because it's very, very, very expensive, and then they weren't graduating. And then believe it or not, like DeVry, ITT Tech, at least I know ITT Tech closed for sure. They closed down for sure, so leaving people with all this debt. It was immensely damaging. So do watch this; you'll get a little bit more context, and hopefully that makes more the satirical piece makes more sense now. So that's what you're going to do here. You're going to look at details, denotative details. That could be phrases. That can be, what you see here in the picture. So what you're doing ultimately is, that's why I say that it's a good idea to, before you start to do this, to answer, what's the tone or general attitude. Tone is how something is expressed, okay? And then, what is the topic of criticism in this instance? And then what is this position? Like, how do they feel about it? So what we're ultimately doing in this section is that we're working backwards, okay? Now that we've understood that the tone of the writer, even though the tone of the writer is X, to comment on Y, truly the author's position is Z. So it's like, how is he using satire to, that's what you're answering. How is the author using satire to bring to the fore this elephant in the room, and what his real position is? I keep saying his. Who's the writer? Does it say? Doesn't say the writer. But in any case, whoever the writer is. So I hope that makes sense. You're kind of working backwards, and that's what we do with textual analysis. Okay. So that's that. So once you complete this, and you can just save it, and let's return to our Canvas module. Okay, so here is the link to submit the handout. If you type it out, submit it here. If you wrote it out in pen, scan it and submit it. Just convert it to a PDF. So. Yeah, I think that's it. That's actually it for this video. So I hope you had fun and enjoyed it and learned something about textual analysis. And the reason this matters is because it's a primordial part of what we do here in English writing composition. So and that's the interesting thing, is that in works of fiction too, and all around us, we see these undercurrents of ideologies and ideas and rhetoric at play without even realizing it. Which actually, your essay that I'm going to explain is going to be very related to this. So, all right, guys. So thank you for your attention.